Good evening, everyone. My name is Meg Munch, and I'm the Director of Events in the Office of Advancement at Illinois Tech, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to Carr Chapel. I'm thrilled we are all able to be together in this beautiful and soulful surrounding, enjoying live music as we celebrate the principles that create a sustainable relationship between humans, industry, nature, and human habitation. It is now my pleasure to introduce the 10th President of Illinois Institute of Technology, Raj Ichenbadi. Raj, we're so pleased to have you with us this evening, and I believe that you will lead us in Illinois Tech as a wonderful guide and will care for what has been great about IIT, furthering the mission in numerous ways and meaningful ways. The Mies Society appreciates and thanks you, Raj, and we are looking forward to working with you. Please welcome Raj Ichenbadi.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for being here. And I want to acknowledge Society, the College of Architecture, and of course our wonderful advancement staff for putting this terrific event together. So let's have a round of applause for Mies Society. So today is, as my provost liked to remind me, today is day 120 of my presidency. So he asked me, what have you done in the last 24 hours? So, but I'm very excited to be here, very excited to be at a university that is known for two major things. One, we have been an opportunity engine for the last 131 years. We have moved people from we are number one in the state of Illinois in terms of moving people from the bottom 20th percentile to the top 20th percentile. We are number one in the Chicago area for occupational learning power, et cetera. So we continue to be an opportunity engine. But the second is when you think about the advancements, when you think about the impact that we have made in certain disciplines, and three disciplines immediately come to mind: engineering, design, and architecture. When I joined Illinois Tech, somebody told me that if you take away the buildings that were built by Illinois Tech faculty or IIT faculty's students or alumni, the skyline would be pretty empty. So that I'm so humbled to be here. I'm so humbled to have been invited, but I must confess that when I got the email inviting me to the Hilb stay, I had to go and check what Hilb stay meant, and thank God for Google. But once I started reading about Professor Hilb, I realized, of course, his professional accomplishments are many, and he was an esteemed colleague of Mies van der Rohe. But also I realized the substantial impact that he has made in a variety of areas, obviously cherished by the students, but his love for the community through his philosophy, through his writings, through his impact actually came through. And to me, when I think about this winter solstice event and celebrating this in this historic Carr Chapel, where we bring people together, and here are people who have made or will make a transformative impact in people's life, etc. To me, that is inspiring and that is humbling, and I'm honored to be a part of this world. But this is also, for me, as I am standing here and thinking about Professor Hilb's legacy, it is about us, all of us here at IIT, being purpose-driven citizens in whatever community we are in, be it the historic Bronzeville district that we are a part of, be it the Chicago community, be it the alumni community or the global community. I do think we all have this opportunity to be impactful in whatever ways we choose. Last but not the least, I know that Meg gave me 1 minute, and I'm probably exceeded it by a couple of minutes, is, you know, people at IIT, we are in a very noble profession. We bring in young people, we educate them, we make them transformative leaders and unleash their innovative spirit in the world. And especially our university has been very unique in terms of providing opportunity for people so that they can be impactful citizens. In this winter solstice, you know, where it is about light in probably the almost darkest day of the year, I do think we all have the opportunity to be the light around us and dispel darkness. So in that spirit, I want to wish you all a wonderful holiday season, a happy, healthy, and peaceful new year. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of the community. Thank you for being such wonderful ambassadors and evangelists for IIT. So thank you for this opportunity, and I hand it over to Meg, right? So thank you.
Thank you, Raj. It is now my pleasure to introduce Alex Kriekar. Alex completed his Bachelor of Architecture in 1991 and his Master of Architecture in 1994 with the College of Architecture. His graduate thesis was guided by Myron Goldsmith and John Vinci as advisors. Alex is currently a principal of Vinci Hamp Architects and is a Mies Society board member. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Megan, for your introduction. I brought a pointer with me as well, which is actually a laser measure, but I think it will work. No, okay, that's all right. Cynthia Franes Olsen has asked me to say a few words about the design and the construction of the Robert F. Carr Memorial Chapel of St. Saviour, the only religious structure that Mies van der Rohe ever designed and had built. I should point out that all the images you'll see in this lecture are for educational purposes only. And I also want to thank John Vinci for his help in sourcing some of the images and materials you will see. So before discussing the chapel, I think it's proper to briefly mention the role that spirituality plays in the life and in the work of Mies van der Rohe. Mies's writings, his quotes and interviews are often diffused with spiritual references. And he showed an interest in the religious philosophy, such as the writings by St. Augustine and the more contemporary books by Romano Guardini, which explore the role spirituality can play in the modern secular world. One of the very few forewords that Mies ever wrote for a book was for the English translation of The Church Incarnate by the architect Rudolf Schwarz. This book discusses the creation of churches using modern design principles, and Mies mentioned reading it many times when it was first published in Germany in 1938. It is clear that spirituality played an important role in Mies's thinking about architecture, and that this chapel was an important commission for him that he did not treat lightly. As Dirk Lohan mentioned a few weeks ago in his lecture at the Arts Club, one of the early influences on Mies occurred at the Cathedral of Aachen, his hometown. In the center of that cathedral is the octagonal chapel built by Charlemagne and consecrated in the year 805 AD, which you can see in the center of the vintage image on the left, which is taken probably around the time that Mies would have known it as in his childhood. Over time, Gothic additions were built onto it, and in the 18th century, the interior of the medieval chapel was plastered over and decorated in the Baroque style. In the late 19th century, when Ludwig Mies was a teenager, the Baroque plasterwork was stripped with the intent of restoring the medieval marble and mosaic cladding. For a brief time, while restoration funds ran low, the unadorned stone and brick construction of the chapel structure was left bare, making a great impression on the young Mies, and one that he never forgot. Then, as restoration progressed, the brick and stone was clad in the marble and mosaics that we see in the interior image now. We have no images of what Mies saw those days, but we can imagine that it may have been similar to the construction that we can see at the Stock Exchange building in Amsterdam by Patrick Berlage. And that was built some 1,100 years later. It was a building that Mies greatly admired for its honest expression of structure and materials. And one of the things to note here on the slide is that you can see the use of English bond on the exterior brick walls, considered the strongest bond for solid brick wall construction. And as you can see here all around us, Mies used the same English bond, the alternate horizontal bands of stretchers and headers around us here in the chapel. In 1949, Mies's office started the planning of a chapel and parish house at IIT for the Episcopal Diocese of Chicago, with funding provided by the family of the late Robert F. Carr, president of the Dearborn Chemical Company. Several early schemes were explored. Initially, these two structures were planned on the 24-foot campus module and were steel framed with non-load-bearing veneer brick on the exterior. Early versions show an elongated chapel with seating in the center and aisles on the sides. Both the chapel and parish house are set within a partially walled enclosure. An interior sketch on the right shows a center ceiling plane that stops short of the steel-framed brick walls on either side, thereby exposing the steel roof structure above. The sketches below it show Mies experimenting with the idea of incorporating a cross in the fenestration above the entry. A later scheme shows the chapel dimensions having changed to 2 by 4 of the 24-foot campus grid modules for an overall size of 48 by 96 feet. It is still steel framed with brick and glass walls, but the plan and proportions are closer to what was eventually built. Note a sketch by Mies, probably given to Joe Fujikawa in his office in order to develop the rendering below it. What is perhaps most interesting in this scheme was the partial mezzanine accessed through a spiral staircase and extended out of the building above the entry to provide a canopy. It's indicated in yellow on the slide. Over the winter of 1950, Mies worked on a final scheme that no longer included the parish house and enclosure wall, and that eliminated the steel support structure in favor of load-bearing brick walls. The chapel shrank to 37 by 60 feet and was no longer on the campus grid. The reasons for these changes are not entirely clear, but they may have been the result of increases in the cost of steel and other materials due to the war in Korea, which had started in the summer of 1950, and the need to stay within the $65,000 budget. The 3-wide thick brick bearing walls in English bond frame the building along the north and south elevations, with returns on the east and west elevations that frame glass walls. The 18-foot, 6-inch height of the brick walls is near the limits for vertical brick wall construction. The glass wall facing west has sandblasted glass for privacy, and the east one obviously is clear. The walls rest on a concrete perimeter foundation and footing, and a terrazzo floor is poured directly over a slab on grade. A steel channel surmounts the brick walls, and a framework of primary and secondary steel I-beams connect into it, supporting precast concrete roof elements. A tar and gravel roof is placed above 2 inches of insulation on top of that. The concrete block wall, I should say a concrete block wall, sits directly behind the altar, and as it is not load-bearing, it has a very elegant floating connection to the steel roof beam directly above it, allowing for some movement between the two different materials. You can see that on the very right-hand side of the slide. You can also note the curtain track that's directly fastened to the underside of the steel beam. The channel at the roof is a peculiar detail. It is visually striking in its simplicity and strength, but functionally a flawed design that does not provide adequate protection against water infiltration. It is very different from the more robust roof edge condition on the right, developed by Myron Goldsmith for the Edith Farnsworth House, which was under construction at this time. In the 2012 restoration, a secondary cap was placed for the roofing to terminate in, set back from the original edge. The steel roof channel at the chapel is also fastened to the brick walls, and thermal expansion and contraction of the steel causes fractures at the brick corners. On June 1st, 1951, ground was broken in a ceremony attended by Bishop Conkling, IIT President Henry T. Hilb, and Mies van der Rohe. A year and a half later, on Sunday, October 26, 1952, the dedication ceremony was held for the newly completed chapel. At that time, old mansions and row houses still occupied the area directly west of the chapel, as you can see on the slide. On the following slide, we can see the completed chapel with the row houses on Wabash Avenue behind it and commercial property still lining State Street. The concrete block wall directly behind the travertine altar was covered with a raw shantung silk curtain, beige in color. Gene Summers in Mies's office made the watercolor sketches on the far right, showing several colors that were under consideration for the curtain. A large polished stainless steel cross fabricated by Jerry Griffith was fastened to the CMU walls and could be covered by the curtain during Lent, much as it is right now, obviously. An earlier design for the altar had a concrete block structure clad with travertine slabs, but Mies much preferred using a single block of travertine weighing 7.5 tons and was able to convince the stone contractor to donate the block, which rests on 3 large travertine slabs. Be interesting to find out how he did that. Inscribed on the top of the block is a single large cross in the center with 4 smaller crosses at each corner, symbolizing the Savior and the 4 evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. A pair of stainless steel candelabras were designed by Ed Duckett, but never fabricated. A different pair was used, as can be seen in these early images by Hedrick Blessing. I want to thank the Mies Society for giving me the opportunity to briefly talk about this small but very important building. And I would like to introduce the next speaker, Cynthia Franes-Olsen, Director of the Mies Society. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Once again, I've learned so much from you on Hilb's Day and beyond. I'd like to, I'm actually speaking on behalf of Dean Reed Kroloff tonight, who unfortunately is under the weather and really is very sorry that he can't be with us. I'm going to introduce him anyway. Reed is the Dean of our College of Architecture here at IIT. He is a leader in the fields of architecture, urbanism, and design. He has managed top design firms, edited the architectural profession's leading publication, and has advised architects and clients on significant projects around the world. He also serves on our Mies Society board. But beyond this, Reed has enhanced the relationship between the College of Architecture and the Mies Society in so many ways that we are truly grateful. Reed had hoped to talk about the power of planning for IIT and the larger community. And this is something that our President Raj talks a lot about these days. So this is very timely. Hilb's Day, according to Reed, is not just a nostalgic tribute to Professor Hilberseimer, but a commitment to benefit from his teachings that were focused on city and regional planning, the ambition for a healthy, productive, and vibrant relationship between IIT and our surrounding neighbors and communities. With this, Reed and I would like to introduce Nilay Mistry, who is a landscape architect, professor, and scholar, on behalf of Ron Henderson, who directs the Master of Landscape and Urbanism program at IIT. Professor Mistry would like to present a very special award this evening. Please welcome Professor Mistry.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be in such a wonderful building back here on campus this semester. The Hilberseimer Medal is given to a second-year Master of Landscape Architecture and Urbanism student who excels in critical thinking on city and regional planning and urban design that distinguish Ludwig Hilberseimer's work. The medal, which we have here, custom-made with an etching of Professor Hilberseimer's signature, will be presented to Rocio Ruiz, who's here in the audience today as well. This is the second year of this new student recognition by the Master of Landscape Architecture and Urbanism program that amplifies our program's legacy from the Department of Urban Planning at IIT that was led by Ludwig Hilberseimer. Rocio has been a student of mine and a number of other faculty members here in the College of Architecture and has come to our graduate program with a background in urban planning and has also coupled her work with a profound and deep understanding of planting to help create memorable public spaces. These are truly ideals that we wish for every one of our College of Architecture graduate students to leave our institution with. So with that, it's a pleasure for me to offer Rocio this award. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cynthia.
Well, thank you and congratulations. We are so pleased that you're here with us this evening after finals week is over, on top of it. I would now like to introduce Keith Olson Sr., who is an alum from the College of Architecture 1970. After graduating from the College of Architecture, he was recruited by Gene Summers, who alum of 1953. And while Gene was at C.F. Murphy and Associates, he employed many IIT alums. Keith went on to be an architect then for Hammond, Beebe and Associates, later a principal of Crick and Olson Architects, a studio professor at IIT, and now directs the work of the firm Olson Branas Design. So with that, I introduce Keith.
So I've been asked to explain a little bit about the images that have been looping on the screens. A little bit hard to see at this scale and distance, but please take a closer look maybe after the program. In Mies's curriculum for an architectural education at IIT, there were a series of courses called City and Regional Planning. Beginning in the third year, there were 4 semesters of CRP, classes that had been developed by Mies with Ludwig Hilberseimer to teach concepts of planning to the aspiring architectural students. The images that have been looping on the screen are mostly of student work that Cynthia and I have put together for the evening, including the freehand pages of a student notebook from the 5th semester. Those are the ones that show the drawings of individual rooms and furniture arrangements that were a part of the basis of the beginning semester in the CRP classes. True to the rational approach of sequence in the classes, they began with an analysis of human needs and functions in a residential setting, single rooms and spaces for a kitchen, bedrooms, bathrooms, a living room, a dining room, and furniture and fixtures. It taught us to think about and understand the basic requirements for the size, the shape, and functional arrangements of rooms in a dwelling unit. Taking a step up from that scale, we analyzed optimal solutions for the orientations of a house, allowing for summertime shade, cross ventilation, and winter sunlight. This drawing is the light and shade study for a minimum amount of sunlight required in a child's bedroom in Chicago on the shortest day of the year. These drawings were typically a 20 by 30 either Strathmore board or a piece of tracing paper as the problems were developed. But it was this particular drawing that shows on the shortest day of the year, December 21st, and how it came to be called Hilb's Day, because we all got to know this amount, the orientation, the angle of the sun, and the amount of sunlight that could be provided with those sort of minimal planning approaches. I love listening to the violin in the background. Is that for me? No, that's cool. So please take a look a little more carefully. It's a great body of work that had to do with the history of the planning courses here at IIT. I would like to introduce Kevin Harrington, Professor Emeritus of Architectural History at IIT. Professor Harrington has taught, lectured, and written about architecture and architectural history for numerous programs here, nationally, and internationally. His focus on Chicago's architectural and urban development in relation to modern architecture is an inspirational asset to students he continues to mentor here at IIT. He and his wife Elaine, an excellent partner in history, are truly appreciated Mies Society members. Kevin Harrington.
Thank you very much, Keith, for that very kind introduction. And greetings, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this quite beautiful night. I hope, as you were coming to the chapel this evening, you saw the about, 7/8 moon rising over the lake, and that if you also looked to the southwest, you saw Venus being brilliantly bright in that sky. So we've got two pieces of the cosmos looking down on us this evening. I want to talk about Hilb's and his presence at IIT in relationship to two other people and then their relationship to the larger world. Because we sometimes think that architecture is, well, you make a building like this one, and then you're in it, and that's it. But we also know it's a little bit more than that. And the program that Hilb's conducted, I was told when I first got here, I'm not an alumnus of the school. When I first got here, I was told that one of the first things you learned in the city and regional planning classes that Hilbersheimer taught is that the design of a city begins at the kitchen sink, which is to say the person at the kitchen sink needs to have a visual relationship to the immediate world around them and by extension to the larger world. And when Hilbersheimer got to Chicago with Mies in the late 1930s, they had the enormously great good fortune to encounter a young landscape architect named Alfred Caldwell. And the three of them together formed a vision for what a modern city could be and how it could transform the world. And their example is very, very powerful. And today I want to talk a little bit about the way that concept extends far beyond architecture. Could I have the next image, please? You all know, if there was a major piece in today's New York Times about the shoe designs of this graduate of the school, Virgil Abloh. He was a DJ, he designed shoes, he designed clothing, he designed interiors. He did all kinds of things, and as you can see from the quote on the screen, which I'll actually take the time to read to you, "I don't believe in disciplines," he observed. "We can use our architecture brain and do many things, not just what we're supposed to." And architecture students learn early in their careers that those who win architectural competitions are those who break the rules in the most interesting ways. And so one of the most powerful things that the school can do is both teach you how the English cross bond works, and then also give you the confidence to not use the English cross bond when it's appropriate. And so this idea of going beyond the seeming limits of your discipline or your profession is, I think, key to what Mies and Hilbersheimer and Caldwell taught, and one of the themes that Abloh seems to have picked up when he was a student here. And then could I have the next image, please? You also know, I assume, that the very great lyricist and composer Stephen Sondheim died also very recently. Abloh was only 41, Sondheim was 91, so he had had a good and long life. And at his death, multiple obituaries recorded that these three concepts, Chicago concepts, I think they are, these three concepts were at the core of Sondheim's thinking. That is to say, the ideas that informed the School of Architecture at IIT, the Department of Architecture, the Department of City and Regional Planning, now the Department of Landscape and Urbanism, those concepts extend also out into the world. The concept that less is more, the concept that God is in the details, the concept that content determines form, which is another way of saying what we associate with Mr. Sullivan, form follows function. Those principles, Chicago principles, world principles, informed Sondheim when he composed and when he wrote, and are another example of the way in which the example of Hilb's begun in Germany, moved to Chicago, had its largest influence in Chicago, had, I think, some of that influence because of the presence of Caldwell. All of those things go to mark the ability and the significance of their example in helping to transform the world into a place better than the one that we found. Now it's my pleasure to reintroduce Cynthia Vranas to move us to the next stage.
Thank you, Professor Harrington. Kevin never disappoints, whether it's talking about Virgil Abloh, Hilb's, or the Roman Empire. I'd like to introduce David Taylor. This is a very special evening. David has played now 2 years in a row. The first year was on a Zoom meeting last year. And so we just felt like we needed to see him in person and hear him in person. David joined the Chicago Symphony Orchestra as assistant concertmaster in 1979. He first studied violin with his father, beginning at the age of 4, and later continued these studies at the Cleveland Institute of Music. His bachelor and master degrees are from Juilliard. With the CSO, he has made numerous solo appearances, including with Sir George Scholti. David has served as concertmaster for local, national, and international audiences, and as a lover of chamber music, he plays and performs in recitals and solo performances in Chicago. David teaches privately at Moody Bible Institute and Roosevelt University in Chicago, a frequent coach of orchestral violinists. He has students in orchestras across the United States and Japan. He lives in Chicago and is married to Michelle Winton, also a violinist. He is here tonight, and we are delighted to say that he loves our campus, the architecture, and the acoustics in our chapel, fondly referred to by our students as the God Box. Please welcome David Taylor.
iPads. Foot pedal. And even when it's dark, you see perfect. I can play out on the middle of the field out there with this. It's really unbelievable.
Next year.
Next year. Well, it's been an amazing year, hasn't it? It's been a year, can you believe, since I played for you guys on YouTube. And are we better off? I guess so. In some ways we are. I mean, the symphony's back to work now, and boy, that's great. I guess for a year we weren't. Now I know how it feels to be retired, which, I don't think I want to go there yet. It's too early. A year ago, I played, as you may recall, solo Bach for you. Now, when a violinist plays alone, without a piano or without an orchestra behind him, invariably he sort of has two choices. He can choose solo Bach, or he can choose Paganini. And the solo Bach, the 6 sonatas and partitas, are, I would say, really the first real virtuoso music that was ever written for the violin. I mean, there's stuff predating it that is pretty difficult, but the 6 sonatas and partitas are amazing in the way in which they're so advanced in the writing. We're going back to 1720 when this stuff was written. You talk about architecture in music. This is the guy. And before you had Mozart, before you had Haydn, before you had Beethoven, you had Bach, and without him, I don't think you really had the others. He laid the whole foundation for everything that was to follow. So architecturally, musically, wow. I mean, this guy is beyond the genius. The last time I played partita number 2 for you in D minor, which included the great Chaconne, which some regard as the greatest single movement, as I mentioned then, that was ever written for the violin. But this time I'm going to play the first partita, which is in B minor. Now, this has like 7 or 8 movements. They're not very long. And I'll go through, as I go through, I'll name each of them. You don't have a program, do you? So you don't really know the individual movements of the piece. So I'll talk about that. And give a little description of each one and what it really is. Basically, the sonatas and the partitas contained dances. That's what they did back then. They didn't have television or internet or any of that stuff, and one of the big entertainment things that they did were dances. And so this is a really important thing to them. Okay, so the first movement is called Alamán, which is also a dance. Now, is that a fast dance or a slow dance? I don't know anybody has the answer. If you listen to 5 recordings of 5 different violinists, they all have a different tempo. So, I don't know. Fast, slow, play it the way you like it. Either way, it comes out pretty good. But this is amazingly advanced writing. By the way, I'm playing this stuff on my own personal best violin, which these sonatas and partitas are written in 1720. This violin was made in 1752. So it goes back a few years. And whenever I play Bach, it gives me an opportunity to use my very best French bow. Now, the Italians to violin making were what the French were to bow making. And so this particular bow was made by the greatest of all bow makers of all time, Francois Tourc, who lived in Paris, and this was made around 1820. So this is also sort of old, but they make a great combination. Okay, I don't want to hold you anymore. At the end, I think we'll open it up to some Q&A, and anybody who has any questions, you can ask as well. Okay, Alamán. Sorry it takes so long, but even back there where it's a little warmer, you come out here in the colder air, everything changes. So you have to be too very sensitive. Okay, here we go. is called double. Now, what does that mean? Basically, it's a ditto of the movement I just finished in terms of the harmony, but with different notes. So, if I were to take a little time, I would play for you the first couple of bars that I just played, and then play this next one. You'll notice that the harmony is exactly the same, even though it's different notes. Then comes another dancing we call Kurante. The next one is called, which is another double, but also it's called presto, which means bloody fast. Another dance, Sarabande. other sonatas. Solo bach. This is the Allegro Sade from the C major. It's one of my favorites, absolutely incredible piece. Good warm-up exercise in the morning when you're had your coffee, or before your coffee. So I'm thanking her for this invite. It's been really wonderful.
Thank you so much.
See you later.
We live to A quick funny story. We live within a planned community in Chicago, and 20 years ago I would watch this gentleman with a violin case under his arm run after the Clark Street bus. And we realized he was somebody special, and he said, well, I said, David, would you like a ride to the symphony? Once I realized that's where he was going, he said, oh no, I take a bus. Take a bus. Well, thank you so much. This was
Oh, you're welcome.
for this brilliant performance.
Good acoustics.
Thank you.
It's really good.
Taking these and,
Yeah.
thank you so much. We wanted to say that maybe we'd save a few questions, Meg, for the end of the program. And so what we'd like to do is thank you, knowing that our instincts to perform and gather are very strong. And you've satisfied this need this evening, and we look forward to more archival performances with you in the future.
That'd be great.
So thank you so much. And
No,
we'll call you back with questions if that's okay.
Oh, sure. Do you want to do questions later, or do you want to go on with your
Up to you.
program now? What do you think?
Whatever. Well, since you're up here,
Yeah.
let's open this up to.
Anybody have any questions? Which one's the hardest for you? Believe it or not, it's often the slow ones.
I think in Leipzig was his church, but this is popular music, so it would have been done for somebody's palace, somebody's big house, or something like that. Do any of those spaces survive? And has anyone figured out if there's a relationship between the character of the space and the character of the music that Bach or someone else would compose to be heard in such a space?
Well, this is chamber music, and obviously it's built for a chamber hall, not for a big monstrosity. And all this is so perfect. I mean, because he's done it before. So I would say that many of those places still are around over there. You know, they're not like we are. We tear everything down in a few years, and they tend to keep their great stuff. And I mean, the halls in Europe, oh my gosh! I mean, our favorite halls are certainly the Music Verein in Vienna. It's not that big a hall. But, my gosh, the acoustics are really nice. So yeah, I would say generally a lot of those spaces are still there. Of course, in churches like that, this would sound fantastic because the acoustics are really great. Somebody else?
Yeah, on that classes piece, what is this? What is that time signature look like?
What is the what?
The time signature, what does that look like? Does it change?
No, not on this one. No, the time signature is absolutely in typical Bach. It's pretty straightforward. Once he picks your 3/4 and 2/4 or whatever, that's it.
I was trying to figure that out, and I was sitting here listening,
Yeah.
I was lost after this.
Well, there's a lot of wonderful syncopation within that becomes, yeah, it's pretty constant. Anybody else? Anything about the instrument or the logo?
How many violins do you own?
I own 2. I have this one, and I now have a modern violin that was made about, it was made 1990, 30 years ago.
What's the difference?
A couple of $1 million. No, it's more than that. You know, we're in a renaissance of violin making. So some of the modern violins are really good, including the one I bought. I don't know that it's more powerful. It might have a little more absolute raw power than this one does. This one has a certain finesse and a certain sheen to the sound that it carries. And some of the modern instruments are louder to the ear, but they're not that loud at the distance. The older great violins, Italians in particular, are bright. So you always hear a piccolo in the middle of the orchestra. So the brighter the violin, the farther back you can hear it generally. But the modern fiddle, I mean, you can do anything on it. It's really good.
Are they always made from the same kind of wood?
Yes, almost invariably. The back and sides are maple, and the top is spruce.
It's spruce?
Spruce. Yeah, it has been that way for 250 years. It just works. Anybody else?
So, what is the factor that makes you choose which violin to play?
Well, there is, of course, the cost. Yeah, you know what a Strat cost is?
Well, I mean, in the sense of why you chose this one.
This one over another one? Well, everybody has, the nice thing about being a violin is you can buy your voice. When you're might say Midwest or East Coast. But there's some great bow makers. Some great bow makers are out there too. You know what a bow maker costs? I mean, the top bow, $500,000. And if the metal parts here happen to be gold, which makes it even rarer, it can be double. So I mean, it's gotten to the point that basically players have forgotten about it. They buy the modern tools, modern tools, and the rest is left to collectors. I'm of the older generation, so I made my moves when I was younger, when it was still possible to do. Now it's pretty much out of the question. So I was always investing in violins and those instead of stocks.
Do you trade those in, the ones that you bought previously, then?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you have to. I mean, you don't have to. But most of us making a living in music, yeah, we sell a cheaper one and you buy a more expensive one. But you trade it and you keep moving up the ladder. Yeah.
When did you start playing violin?
Say it again?
When did you start? How old were you when you started for it?
I found a 1/8 size violin in the attic of our house and started making noise driving my father crazy. And he was a violinist, not very good, but he was a very good teacher. He was my first teacher from the age of 4 till I was 9. And that's the story. I don't know if he in fact took me by the scruff of the neck and took me upstairs and, hey kid, look at this thing here. You know, I don't think so. But that's the story. I found this violin up in the attic and just started making noise. I don't know. It's a good story. I was just 3. The greatest of all violins, Joshua Heifetz, was 3 when he started. And then what? Anybody else? Well, thanks again. This was.
Now it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce our alumnus, College of Architecture, Peter Pointner, to give a very special toast to his mentor and professor. So with that, we have something to share with you on the screen.
Dear friends, we share a common heritage, and at 84 I can appreciate even more the heritage from IIT and the Bauhaus influence which were brought by Mies van der Rohe and his colleagues to IIT, and especially his colleague Ludwig Hilbersheimer, better known as Hilbs. I'm Pete Pointner, graduate of the architecture class that started in 1956. I admire and appreciate the work of the Mies Society. I'm here via video to offer a toast to Hilbs. Hilbs, as he was affectionately called, was my thesis advisor, which I worked on for my master's in city and regional planning. I was also a graduate assistant helping Ogden Hannaford with his lab courses. Back then, if you took the planning option in the 5th year of architecture, you could get your academic courses in which would allow you to get your master's within 1 year by simply working on a thesis. I only had to write a thesis, and it involved meeting with my advisor, Hilb, once a week. The first part of each weekly meeting was a review of my progress and his questions, which were always penetrating. As all good teachers, most of the comments were thoughtful questions. Most of the rest of the afternoon, he talked about his experiences and insights in planning and in history. When we ended the day, I would drive him to his home on the north side, and then we would go to the German restaurant, the Red Star Inn, and there we would continue our discussions, and he would pick up the tab. In graduate school, that was a big deal. Some thoughts on Hilb. His great ideas were often communicated by other faculty, such as Paul Thomas and Jack Bronson. His famous tree is a diagram of relationships and has often been misconstrued and misinterpreted literally as an actual plan. An engineer who I've worked with once said, transportation is a substitute for nearness, and organizing development around a sense of community within walking distance of daily needs was a fundamental principle, as well as designing with nature. Hilb reinforced the Mies principles of rational architecture, that a building should respond to its site, its structure, its function, and its surroundings. Hilb taught that we should relate the big picture to real natural elements such as sun orientation and topography. This was part of our early education at school. He was a deep, thoughtful, sensitive, kind, and great mentor. So to Hilb and his ideas and ideals, I propose a hearty toast. Thank you, God, for giving us this great human being. Your friend, Pete Pointner.
As we begin to appreciate all that Hilb's meant to his students, I'd like to introduce Perry Ermer. Perry is president and CEO of DuSable Museum of African American History. Perry was born and raised in Hyde Park, holds a professional Bachelor of Architecture degree from our College of Architecture here at IIT, and a JD from the University of Chicago Law School. She's our newest Mies board member, so please welcome Perry Ermer.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, and thanks everyone for being here this evening. President Ichambadi, my honor always to be in your presence, and thank you so much. I see some of my classmates from the early 80s. You know, when I was a student here in actually the late 70s and early 80s, the trees were a lot smaller and younger, and so was I. So I want to tell you tonight about a project that we have just started through the Mies Society, and that is preparing with the College of Architecture and the Master of Landscape and Urbanism program the gaining of Arboretum status for our Mies Campus at Illinois Tech. Now, this is a national distinction that would preserve, protect, and the landscape and the species as first envisioned by Alfred Caldwell. And we would study Alfred's layout and plantings in life drawing and also in some of the visual training classes that we had back then in the School of Architecture. So truly beautiful and truly worth preserving and worth gaining this important status. IIT has done a lot, does so much to return the campus landscape to this original plan. And the Arboretum status would ensure care and help educate our students and the public about the treasure we have in our landscape and campus design. Chandra Goldsmith, and also a Mies Society board member, and Ron Henderson, director of the Landscape program, have been guiding their students and working on a draft to outline the Arboretum proposal for the campus. And the Mies Society and College of Architecture are working together to support and bring this to fruition. I'm also going to be having some discussions at the state legislative level, to see if we can achieve some helpful funding for this goal, and we will keep you posted on that. So the Arboretum designation means that we're committed to recognizing one of the major principles of city and regional planning, the program taught by Hilb's for many years. The importance of landscape, nature, and architecture, and together, these are the cornerstone of a healthy, productive, and vibrant relationship between IIT and our surrounding neighbors and community, which remains central to our goals here at IIT and the Mies Society. And I want to personally express my gratitude and support for President Ichambadi and his commitment to reconnecting with the historic communities that surround this historic campus. And I can't tell you how important that is for these communities to hear, finally, that some attention is being paid to their collective history along with this very important campus. You know, when I was in school here, it really was a commuter school. You know, I took the bus to school, 3 buses actually, and then my mom picked me up from Crown Hall at whatever time they let us breathe and go to the bathroom. And it was, again, mostly a commuter school. And we had a reputation down here on the south side that was, you know, false, but yet and still persisted, of a lack of safety, of a lack of community, and nothing really could have been further from the truth, and certainly is not true now. But it's going to, like every long-lasting, myth, it's going to be tough to break, and President Ichambadi's commitment to that is really essential. There's so many critical issues facing big cities today, all big cities, not just Chicago: public safety, public health, education, food insecurity. But among the most important aspects, and one that really intersects with everything I just mentioned, is how we use our land, how we plan our urban areas. And Ed, as a developer, will tell you how important this is, how many of these issues are being faced by communities now who are feeling displaced, who are feeling encroached upon with gentrification, how important it is to approach these problems in this beautiful living laboratory that we have between IIT, between the Obama Presidential Center, which is facing a lot of these issues right now. And I recall, again, when we were in school here, what a great and important program city and regional planning was. And I think it's a wonderful time to be revisiting that, maybe as a multidisciplinary field of study between a School of Policy, Business, Law, and Architecture. And so I leave you with those thoughts in terms of the extreme relevance of these issues today as we come here to celebrate Hilb's and celebrate Mies, how important, extremely important these issues are here today, and how important this institution is in advancing those principles, and not only of purity of design, but also on the principles of equity. So I thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll turn it back over to Cynthia. Thank you very much, and happy holidays, everyone. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Perry. It's so great to have you with us, and thank you for your words. I'd like to now introduce Ed Pollack. Ed is our chair of the Mies Society. He's also executive vice president of real estate with Draper and Kramer, overseeing development initiatives. He chairs the firm's investment committee. Ed earned his bachelor degree here at IIT at the College of Architecture in 1979, and then practiced architecture with the firm of Danforth, Rockwell, Caro, and then Perkins & Will and HLM, We are very, very fortunate to have Ed, and this evening he's here with his wife, Nancy. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Cynthia. It's good to see everybody here, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening. What a great program, Cynthia. Wonderful job. All of our contributors, thank you so much. And I think David Taylor and our president deserve special thanks, so extra special thanks to you. I'm going to be quick because we're running a little bit long. You know, the Mies Society's role is kind of an ever-evolving role. We've been a fundraising mechanism for the school to help preserve our architecture on our great campus. Recently we just finished a fundraising effort to do a restoration of the south porch and steps at Crown Hall. We're now underway with a second program to do modifications to the Galvin Tower lobby, basically the west lobby, to create a more permanent exhibition space about the campus and to have maybe rotating exhibitions about different architectural activities. And there's a great one coming up in February about the influence of Mies van der Rohe on furniture design. The other thing that I think is really exciting is a lot of the things that Perry touched on. You know, our group, as a group of professionals, really believe in full engagement with our community. And I can't emphasize enough, as a developer, you know, and as a person whose company owns Lake Meadows and owned Prairie Shores and has been a part of this community longer than I've been a part of it, how critical it is that we recognize we're part of Bronzeville, and Bronzeville is part of us and has been for a good 75 years. So I thank you all. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention. The other good thing that we've done this year is we've initiated a couple of different programs. One is a scholarship that the Mies Society is funding for an architectural student each year. And we're also funding internships. So your support's always welcome and appreciated. And we look forward to our next event, which I think will be in February. And I want to thank you all again and wish you all a really, really happy holiday season and a wonderful, wonderful new year. Thanks. Mary Jo.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. As Cynthia mentioned, we do have some T-shirts, so please be sure to take one. And we have some refreshments. We do ask that you please enjoy them outside, just to keep everyone safe this holiday season. But again, thank you for joining us.